Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be doing my June wrap-up part 2. I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I finished in the second half of the month. I have plenty to talk about, so let's jump right in. Actually, before I jump into the books that I read, I do want to mention that last week I put up a video of my 10 least popular books on my TBR. I just want to point that out in case you missed it. I went through my physical TBR and I looked up every single one on Goodreads to see which one had the least amount of reviews and ratings, and just talked about them a little bit in that video, and it was kind of fun. Link to that will be up in the cards. You can check that out if you haven't already. A lot of you guys seem to really enjoy that as well, and I just thought it was fun to talk about some under the radar books that could potentially use a little bit more love. All right, so the first book I'm going to mention is a reread, and I don't typically do a lot of rereads, but what has been happening more frequently recently is that I am listening to audiobooks and doing like rereads of books through audiobooks, and something about that is just so appealing to me. Like last winter I started rereading the Harry Potter books through audiobook, and I didn't get through all of them. I think I got through 2 or 3 and then I stopped because I wanted to do other things. And then recently on Hoopla, they added all of Marissa Meyer's books. So I decided to listen to Cinder by Marissa Meyer. I'm not going to do a whole spiel on this book because I read this when it originally came out, which was like in 2014 or 2013 or something along those lines. And I really enjoyed it back then, and I had followed the series all the way through and really enjoyed the books. I was actually talking about this book with someone recently, and because we were talking about like fairy tale retellings, and so I was talking about how much I love this book, and then they decided to pick it up, and then I was like, oh crap, what if it doesn't like hold up anymore? And then I saw it on Hoopla, so I decided to listen to it, and luckily for me at least, it does hold up. It is like the most predictable out of the entire series. It follows the Cinderella storyline like so closely. It's like so obvious what's going to happen. Like I think even when I originally read it, I saw a lot of the plot points happen. But yeah, it was just kind of nice to jump back into this world. I love Aiko to death still, and yeah, I probably will be slowly working my way through the audiobook versions of this. And I'm especially excited to see sort of how Scarlet holds up for me, because I did not enjoy Scarlet very much. I mean, I still liked it. It's my least favorite out of the 4, and I'm kind of just intrigued to see how that one holds up for me, especially because I think that's also the one I remember the least of because I didn't enjoy it as much. So yeah, I'm gonna link to my super old Cinder review. Do not judge me in that video because it's so old. The lighting is terrible, the sound is terrible, the way I talk is terrible. Like, oh man, old Rincey definitely was not comfortable in front of cameras as much as she is now. So yes, Cinder, still really enjoy it. The other audiobook I listened to this month was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This is also on Hoopla, and I ended up picking this one up because I got kind of sick and I couldn't look at screens and I wanted to read, but I didn't really want to hold up a book. So I found this on Hoopla and decided to give it a go. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I liked it. I didn't love it. There were parts of it I like super duper enjoyed, and there's parts of it that were just kind of okay for me. So in this story, you are following this character named Stella who has Asperger's, and she's around 30 years old. She works as like an engineer or computer programmer or something along those lines, and she has made like so much money, but the one thing that she is like super terrible at is relationships, and she does want to like get married or have a serious relationship. And so what she decides to do is to hire an escort basically to teach her how to do things like kiss and have sex and things like that. So she does that. She ends up hiring this escort named Michael Fan, who is half Vietnamese, half Swedish, I want to say. He's half white. So when they first meet, she like sort of lays out what she wants, and she asks him if he's willing to like basically do like a 6-month teaching lesson or something along those lines, or like a 3-month teaching lesson or something like that, to slowly teach her all the different things that she needs to know about like the physical aspects of a relationship. And then they basically just like slowly fall for each other, and then they like realize that she doesn't need to just learn the physical aspects, but she also needs to know like what it's like being a girlfriend and what it's like being in a relationship and things along those lines. So yeah, the parts of this book that I really enjoyed are the characters themselves. Stella is such a fantastic character, and it's also really great to follow a character who has Asperger's. I believe that the author herself is also on the spectrum. So you know that like the things that Stella is going through is relatively accurate to what it's like to be on the autism spectrum. They do a really, really great job of talking about the things that are triggers for her, the things that are really difficult for her to deal with, and also show how she's able to overcome those things and live a relatively like normal life. How like her being on the spectrum doesn't mean that she has to be this like closeted weirdo. Like one of the things I really like about this book is that Stella is portrayed as being like really successful and relatively likable. Like she's not super duper like off-putting to everyone that she comes into contact with, but she just has a hard time with certain aspects of relationships. And obviously they talk about how it's like difficult for her to read certain social cues and things like that. And I think that the way Michael in the story handles that, as well as the way that he like accommodates her and things like that, is like really sweet and really touching. What I didn't like about the book is like how sex heavy it is. I mean, I know that sounds kind of weird because this is basically a romance book, and like they tell you that Stella wants to learn like how to have sex, but they basically just start having sex immediately, and it feels like they just constantly have sex. Like I don't know if it's just because I was listening to it in one like straight listen, but it just felt like it was so much sex, and maybe it's just me being a prude, but it just felt, I don't know, it just felt like too much for me at times. And then also like the way the story goes, like things that happen in the second half of the book just feel a little bit too outrageous, I suppose you can say, for me. I don't know, like the way everything wraps up is just nice and sweet. And again, it wasn't a bad book by any means, but I think just personally not my favorite romance novel that I've read. But again, the fact that I'm enjoying these romance novels are great. And I think that the author is writing a second book in the series, and it's not following the same characters, Stella and Michael. You're actually following, I think it's Michael's cousin, who also has autism. So I'm kind of intrigued to see how that plays out. So I probably will pick up the next book in this series, but again, this wasn't like my favorite romance by any means. All right, the next book that I finished was Undead Girl Gang by Lily Anderson. This is a pretty new young adult book. This book was pitched as Veronica Mars Meets the Craft, which is 100% the reason why I ended up picking this one up. So in this story, you are mainly following this character named Mila Flores, who is a teenager. She's in high school, and her best friend and basically only friend, Riley, ends up dead. She's like found in the creek, and people just assume that it's a suicide, but Miley is very much convinced that it was murder or something happened to her, because there's no reason why Riley would ever be in or near the creek. And this death happened shortly after two other girls from their high school were found hanging in what seems to be sort of like a suicide pact sort of situation. So people are wondering if like Riley was a part of that, or is just like amongst this trend of girls in their high school committing suicide, something along those lines. So Riley and Mila were basically like practicing Wicca. So she decides that she is going to try to use the spells that she finds in order to bring Riley back to life, at least temporarily, to figure out what exactly happened in her death. But when she does the spell, not only does Riley come back to life, but so do the two other girls who recently died. Then you just follow them as they try to figure out what exactly happened in their death, because when they come back to life, they don't remember everything that happened immediately right before they died. So it's sort of like the story of crazy hijinks as these three basically zombies are wandering the earth, trying to both hide as well as to see the people that they love and they're not going to be able to see anymore, as well as trying to figure out what exactly happened here. So yeah, this is another book that got a 3 out of 5 stars for me. It's very like addicting page turner, very unique plot. There's a lot of things in here that just don't seem, it seems kind of stupid to say don't seem realistic, because like it's a story about zombies, but like even within the zombiness, some of it just didn't really click with me. There are situations where people see the zombies, and I feel like the reaction is a little bit underrated, sort of. Like people aren't asking as many questions as I feel like they should be asking when they see people that they know are dead. But again, really fun book. It's really interesting to see sort of where it goes, because it does not go where I think it's going to go or where I thought it was going to go at all. Like the last 50 to 75 pages, there's like this major thing that happens, and then from then on it's sort of like a roller coaster to see how it all wraps up. It's pretty unique. Like I don't think I've ever read anything like this, and even just what Lily Anderson does with the book is very like original and things like that. I think one of the flaws that I had with this book is that they talk a lot about being Wiccan and that sort of like religion thing, and I feel like it was sort of underserved for a religion that's pretty non-mainstream. They don't talk about it very well. Like they talk about all these aspects of Wiccan culture that feel like caricatures of being a witch. And while they do point out that some of the things that happen in here aren't typical of Wiccan culture or religion, I feel like they don't do a good job of explaining what being a Wiccan is actually like. So that was one of the reasons why it's only a 3-star book for me as opposed to a 4-star book. But yeah, if you're looking for something different and plot driven and want something sort of like out of the box and weird, I recommend this. I think that if you like shows like iZombie, you'll probably like this one as well. So yeah, 3 out of 5 stars, not bad, but not great either. All right, next up, if you watched my June wrap up part 1, you would have seen me talk about how I was reading John Adams by David McCullough, and I said in that video, if I would just focus solely on this book, I could probably finish it. And so I decided to just do that after I like got over my sickness and could read like a normal person again. So I did. I focused on this book and I finished it and I really enjoyed it. I was slightly skeptical about this book going into it because John Adams doesn't have like the best reputation. Like he's not the smartest founding father and he's not like the bravest like George Washington and he's not like super fun and exciting like Thomas Jefferson, but he was a very like honest and hardworking person, and especially like his relationship with Abigail was probably the best for me. I also think David McCullough is just a fantastic history writer. Like he is able to make everything seem interesting. I think it's because like he's so invested in the topics and people that he decides to write about, and that comes across in his writing. And so I feel like this is like I feel like this is a great biography of John Adams for sure. It's super readable. Obviously, like it's on the longer side and it's going to be like extremely detailed, but I think that if this was your very first biography that you ever read, this would be a pretty good entry point. One of the things though that I just found amusing is just how much of the other founding fathers are in this biography. Like obviously talking about the Revolution, talking about the starting of the country, you have to talk about even just like Washington and things like that because he was vice president for Washington, and you have to talk about how he compares to the other people around during that time period. But it felt like so much of this book was taken up by the scandals of Thomas Jefferson and like the scandals of Hamilton and things like that. There were like legitimate giant chunks that just talked about Thomas Jefferson, and I was like, well, this has nothing to do with John Adams. But I'm assuming that's also because it gives you context for things that were happening during that time period and that John Adams had to deal with. And he was sort of friends with Thomas Jefferson, so he would have had to encounter all of these stories as well. So I understand it provides context, but some of the time when I was reading this book, I was like, is John Adams just so boring they don't have any fun stories about him, so they're throwing in fun stories about Thomas Jefferson, and by fun I mean like scandalous. So yeah, John Adams, interesting president. I'm definitely glad that I read this, and I'm very excited to continue on with the next biography. Now I have to look up to see which Thomas Jefferson biography I'm going to read, since he is next up on the list. But yeah, I wish David McCullough would just write a biography on every president, because I feel like he would make them all seem interesting. All right, the next book that I finished this month is probably my favorite read of the month. It's a contender for my favorite read of the year, or at least it'll probably be on my list of favorite reads of the year, and that is There by Tommy Orange. I'm not going to talk about this one too much here because I am going to do a full review on it because I loved it so much. It deserves its own review, but this book was fantastic. Tommy Orange is of Native American descent, and this book follows Native Americans modern day who are living basically in like the Oakland area. It's a multi-generational story, and you are following a bunch of different characters. Every single chapter follows a different character, and then like after a while the characters rotate through. And so typically stories with multiple points of view don't vibe with me, but I think because all of these characters are intertwined, like the way that their relationships are, like actual blood relationships, really do look like a spider's web. One of the things that someone at Book Riot was talking about recently, like right before I picked up this book, was how like complicated the web was, and they decided to like draw out like a family tree type of situation, or draw out like connections between all of the characters, and they like posted a picture on Slack, and it's like all over the place because there's so many different connections. So I will say that if you decide to pick up this book, it feels more like interconnected short stories than a novel. There is like a plot that sort of runs through it, but it's more of a character-based story than a plot-based story. In fact, I think the plot is the weakest part of the story, but if you are having a really hard time, I highly recommend like writing down the character names as you're coming across them, and then writing down what their relationships are to other characters, and just like keeping that piece of paper like as your bookmark in the book, because it does get a little bit confusing at times how everyone is sort of related to each other. There's a lot of characters that you come across, but this book is beautiful. It's beautifully written. Like, there were so many passages in here that if this I wasn't owning a library copy, I would have underlined. I kept like posting pictures of it on my Instagram stories. I didn't even post all of the pictures. Like, I took so many more pictures than I posted because I was like, okay, this is getting kind of obnoxious with the number of quotes I was posting onto my stories. But the writing in here is just like poignant and heartbreaking. This book talks a lot about just like grief and trauma and the way that we deal with like these difficult situations. And by we, I just mean like people in general, but also like the very specific difficult situations that Native Americans have had to deal with in our country, and their like erasure, both like literally being killed off and their culture also being killed off, and what it means to be a Native American in the United States today, especially because like most people just think of Native Americans as this very specific type of person. But if you're living in like a major city like Oakland and you've grown up your entire life in this city and you are just like almost everyone else, but you're also not like everyone else because you have this whole culture and history, and how much do you need to know about your culture and history in order to consider yourself an Indian? All of these different topics are discussed in here, and it's just like beautiful. I have a strong feeling that the ending is going to be very divisive for people, so just a warning for that. But I just love this book so, so much. This is probably my number 2 book of the year so far, with Circe being number 1. I loved it. I loved it, loved it, loved it. All right, so after I finished there, I was having a little bit of a book hangover, so I decided that I would pick up a comic book to deal with it. And I picked up Ms. Marvel Volume 7. This one is subtitled Damage Per Second. Again, if you follow me on Instagram and you watch my stories, you would have seen me posting some panels from this. This one covers issues 14 through 18. 13 through 18, I believe, of like the most recent run. And 13 is almost like a standalone. Then 14 through 17 are a 3-issue arc, and then 18 is almost like a standalone. So the first issue in this arc deals a lot with like voting and democracy, and I think it was meant to come out right around the time of the election, or I think it did come out right around the time of the election. And there are just like these really great panels in here, like full page panels of Ms. Marvel like holding a flag, encouraging people to take part in democracy and to go vote. And I just like desperately want all of these as like full giant posters to hang on my walls. So that's one thing. But yeah, I was reading this like right after the most recent Supreme Court decisions came out, and I was feeling like so disheartened by democracy. And then I was reading that issue and I was like, well, that's a little bit healing / helpful. And I was like, tears were running down my cheeks in my bed. So yeah, that issue was like great. I mean, it's very much one of those things that's like written for kids, high schoolers who might be entering voting age soon here in the United States, and like encouraging them to take part in what's happening in the world and politics, and to go out and vote and make your voice heard, which 100% here for all of that. Then the arc for this volume is probably like my least favorite arc that I've read so far in Ms. Marvel. Not to say that it was terrible, but it just felt like super preachy to me. The villain in that arc is like a literal internet troll, and the way that she talks about things like being kind on the internet and stuff like that, I'm like, yes, good message, but also it just walked that line, that very fine line of like being helpful and good for teens, but also just being like super preachy. And I was just like, it was a little bit eye rolly at times. So yeah, this is not my favorite volume of Ms. Marvel by any means, but I'm still continuing on because I love Ms. Marvel. Also, the final issue features Bruno, and that was fun. I don't think I can say more than that without spoilers, but I'm kind of hoping that Bruno comes back soon. Is that considered a spoiler? I don't know. If you're not caught up, I suppose. But like, this came out forever ago. Like, I'm super behind on my Ms. Marvels because volume 8 is already out. So yeah, stuff happens with Bruno in the previous volume, which broke my heart. And yeah, stuff's happening with him. And so I'm very intrigued just to see what happens with him. I don't know how long he's going to be gone for. I own volume 8, so I might as well just read that one just to see what happens. All right, so that's everything I have finished so far in June. I had a pretty great reading month, to be honest. I'm very proud of myself for reading the John Adams biography because I didn't know if that was actually going to happen. If you saw my last video, I think I talked about how I did a summer TBR type of video for Book Riot. And so I basically picked out 3 big books that I'm going to be reading over the course of like June, July, August. June was John Adams, obviously. July is going to be me attempting to read Barkskins by Annie Proulx. And then August, I will be reading Three Musketeers, which will hopefully be a read-along with some of you guys. So I will have a video coming out next Friday talking about the Three Musketeers read along and talking just about how I deal with read alongs in general and inviting you guys to pick up Three Musketeers along with me in August. So just a heads up for that. So yeah, that's everything that I have for this video. Feel free to leave a comment down below letting me know. Have you read any of these books? Do you have any questions about any of these books? Otherwise, let me know what your favorite read of the month was. So yeah, that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching.